Can I revisit one thing you just said a second ago? I don't want to gloss over it because, listening to you, I'm being educated beyond, but you said that you voted for Biden. And
yeah.
I assume you didn't do that lightly.
Well, I didn't have a choice.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to ask you, is that why do you feel like your back was against the wall, like if you didn't have a choice, to put it in Putin terms?
Frankly,
and then what did you expect from him, and what grade would you, I guess, give him now?
I'm a sucker for believing. I'm an optimist, and I believe that he reached a certain age, 78, that he's a little more mature and that he sees the bigger picture. And in this case, Ukraine, he's making a big mistake. A big mistake. He thinks he's off the hook. He looks like the good guy now with all this anti-Russian thing. But when we get to a deeper place, which is where it's going to go, and this thing gets harder and harder for Americans, and they might be, we're not past any war yet. The war could expand. Now, certainly Zelensky would like the war to expand because he would sacrifice the world in order to save Ukraine. He doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about, he sees this whole thing as a crusade, as a jihad. Biden has given him the go-ahead to do this. Biden is the one who should be calming this situation down. He should be speaking to Putin, speaking to Zelensky, calming it down, being a statesman instead of an ideologue. This is a time for a Kennedy. This is a time, that's what Kennedy did with Khrushchev. This is a time for a statesman, like a Charles de Gaulle, somebody who really has a picture of the world. I was hoping Macron of France could have some effect, but you can't get through the Ukrainian-U.S. connection. That's the problem.
But beyond Ukraine, what's happening?
There's no beyond Ukraine right now because it's stuck there. There's a disconnect. The Americans see Russia as an evil, and they don't understand, and the Russian position, which is crazy. Why can't a statesman understand what Russia is thinking? Putin is fighting for his life. You can get rid of him, but whoever takes his place will probably be tougher because they know that they're up against it. Okay, let them give up. Let's say, okay, give up. So what do you do if you want to give up? All right, then you put NATO into Ukraine. Put missiles into Ukraine. Fine, you can put them right on our border. We'll take all the refugees you can give us, and there'll be another confrontation when you make your next move.
And one of the things you often hear, though, is, well, this would be different under Trump. Nothing happened with Ukraine and Russia under Trump.
That's not true. That's not true at all. Trump, on the contrary, is a very strange guy. He was making sounds about Putin when he came in, and I was hoping that there'd be some détente. But as he got more and more pressure for his Russiagate, which was a joke, but it was a serious accusation. That was, of course, political, too, putting pressure on Trump, not allowing him to get anything done with this pressure from Russiagate for, 2 years? That was insane, that he was a Russian agent, all that stuff. No one, if you were thinking, it was so ridiculous. And I asked Putin about that, too, and Putin practically laughed. He knows that it's not possible. But they pictured Trump as a tool, as a Manchurian candidate or something. As a result, he became very anti-Russian, too, in the sense that he was past every single sanction against Russia that was put onto him by Congress. You check his record on Russia. He did everything they wanted. And then recently, I saw yesterday or 2 days ago one of his comments, which was insane. He said he's not a coward like Biden. Something like Biden is a weakling, something like that, implying that he would be much tougher, which means what? War, nuclear war, to my mind.
Last thing before we wrap up here. So you said that the right thing to do right now for Biden is to be a statesman. To be a statesman. Right thing for him to do right now is to be a statesman, reach out to Putin, have a meeting with him, sit down, have that conversation.
Well, he also has to he has to deal with Ukrainian, and he has to deal with the neo-Nazi issue. He's got to deal with the Ukraine administration, the way that country is run. I think if we could reach a deal where they could split East and West, it would, but it's very hard to do that.
Yeah, that's not going to be easy to do, though. I don't think that's the direction it's going to go. Yeah. You saw they made him an offer, and Zelensky turned it down. But he promised them that he's going to cool off the negotiation with NATO, and he's kind of backing out from getting closer to NATO. It seems like, who is Putin most annoyed and upset with for him to get to this point? Is he seeing it, from your opinion, as being opportunistic, saying, I'd rather do it under Biden because of how they handled Afghanistan and the Taliban got what they wanted rather than Trump? Is it more purely he's just being opportunistic, or did somebody do something with a proxy, NATO, Biden, U.S., somebody pissed him off to say, this is the time to go attack?
He didn't get pissed off. No, he doesn't get pissed off. What struck me about him over these years that I met him was how cool he was, how rational. He's a chess player. He looks at politics as without emotion, and that's, I think, one of his
Powerful.
You know, you talk about him as if he's some villain in the West, but the truth is, if you go to Africa and you go to the Middle East and parts of Asia, you'd be surprised that he's admired as one of the best statesmen of this era. But unfortunately, we've put him in this. It's a disconnect between America, and partly because of our propaganda. It's very powerful. I'm surprised by the EU's tough. I mean, basically, you understand Biden made this move using Ukraine, but it helps him with EU and NATO. It makes their dependence on the United States even tighter. So, and he was worried about losing their control of the EU sector because they're economically much more involved with Russia and China than we would like.
What's the worst thing? Last question. What's the worst thing Putin is capable of doing?
The worst thing?
Yes, the worst thing he's capable of doing if we keep playing the strategy that we're playing.
There's no hope down that road.
Okay.
So if we put more pressure and more pressure, which is what happened recently, he's going to fight back. And will he blow up the world? My God, what does he? I mean, is he supposed to sacrifice Russia to the world? Perhaps that's the ultimate question, right? Are you willing to leave office, be shamed? Would you be willing to let Russia become open to NATO or whatever you want to, something like that? But that would be a complete capitulation, wouldn't it? And that would be the end of the Russians are very proud people. The ones that I saw, they're very proud. Their country is, I said, he's a son of Russia. He's not a communist. He's not an evil bench. He's a son of Russia. He's very lower class, came from a poor family. His parents were in the war. I mean, the whole story, it's just, and he's not a KGB agent. That's another ridiculous thing. You hear that. George Bush was in the CIA, but we don't say he was a CIA agent. But that's an American denigration, as if he's still thinking like a KGB agent out of James Bond, and he wants to kill people. It's childish. He's a Russian patriot, and if we see him that way, you can start to deal with him. But there's so Russia-phobia in this country. It's, as I say, going back to 1918, I wish you need a statesman. You need American statesmen. Who's the last one? Kennedy.
Do we have a current one right now?
Gorbachev is still alive. I wish that he'd come out of. He's old. I met him a few times. I like Gorbachev, but I don't think the American side would even deal with him. I mean, they wouldn't understand what his contribution has been to the world. I thought 1986 was going to be a new era when he came in. Who was Gorbachev? He came out of nowhere to me. And it was a beautiful moment in time.
Have you thought about reaching out to him and having an interview with him, or no?
Well, he knows what's going on. I mean, would the Americans accept him as an arbitrator here?
Can you pull up a picture of him right now, Mikhail Gorbachev?
If you had George Shultz and Gorbachev, and if George was still alive, they would be the perfect older men.
Is there anyone in America right now that is the perfect statesman that could maybe step up? Well, it's not going to be Biden, according to you.
Yeah, maybe Obama.
You think Obama?
Maybe, although he's so aware of the popular will that would he buck it.
So if you enjoyed this little segment from the podcast, click over here to watch the entire podcast. And if you've not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Take care, everybody.